Hello, this is Aaron Mean of SG Gaming Info, and welcome to my video review of Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood, the second expansion for Square Enix's MMORPG, Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood is an enjoyable expansion, with it being every bit as polished as Heavensward and A Realm Reborn. And like the previous expansion, Stormblood offers a good array of new features. The new features are the addition of 2 new jobs, Samurai and Red Mage, an increased level cap from 60 to 70, the addition of swimming and diving, new beast tribes and primals, a new residential district, a massive PvP update, expanded inventory space, new main story, and most importantly of all, several battle system changes. Now let's start with Stormblood's main story. Stormblood's story revolves around liberating Alamigo and Doma from more than 20 years of Garlean occupation. The story spans 2 continents, with the fight to free Alamigo taking place on Eorzea, and the fight to free Doma taking place on Othad. Personally, I felt Stormblood's story to be rather poor in comparison to Heavensward, as Stormblood lacked that personal touch. Now, that isn't to say the story didn't pull a few heartstrings, but I just didn't feel as emotionally attached to what happened in Stormblood. The overall story also felt rushed, which in my opinion was due to the size of the expansion. While I'll try not to reveal too much, the Othad portion of the story jumped from relaxed to assaulting Doma in almost breakneck speed. Now, with my issues with the story laid out, I will say the expansion's main characters do help elevate the story. The main antagonists, acting Imperial Viceroy of Doma, Yotsuyu, Imperial Viceroy of Alamigo and Crown Prince of the Garlean Empire, Xenos Ye Galvas, and Alamigo collaborator Fordola are all well fleshed out. Xenos is also an impressive main enemy. He rules with an iron fist and has no issues killing his own men to secure a victory. He is a great enemy to the Warrior of Light, as he is someone that your character could potentially become. I will say Yotsuyu is also an interesting character, but explaining why would be a massive spoiler. In terms of main protagonists, Lise very much takes center stage. The expansion focuses on the growth of Lise as she goes from the character who is worried about living up to her sister and father to being a key part of the Alamigo resistance. As you journey, the characters that accompany you and Lise change. Although I will say the expansion was at its most interesting when the team consisted of Lise, Alice, and yourself. Speaking of Alice, she proves to be a far better travelling companion than her brother Alphinaud, as Alice offers a calming wisdom that keeps everyone in check. While in Othad, your main allies are Gosetsu, Yugiri, and Lord Hyun. These 3 only really hang around for the Othad portion of the expansion, but the time spent with them is memorable, especially scenes involving Gosetsu. Now let's talk about the lands you visit. In Stormblood there is a total of 7 new zones: the Fringes, the Peaks, the Locks, the Ruby Sea, Yanxia, the Azim Steppe, and Kugane. There are 3 zones in Alamigo, 3 zones in Othad, and 1 zone in Hingashi. The 3 zones in Alamigo, which are the Fringes, the Peaks, and the Locks, are all desert/rocky landscapes, with the Garlean technology and scars of war dotting the lands. The 3 zones in Othad are rather varied, with the Ruby Sea being an island chain with underwater quest hubs. Yanxia is farming land that shows signs of Garlean conflict, and the Azim Steppe is a vast expanse of grasslands where various Zeli Ara factions call home. Finally, in Hingashi there is Kugane. Kugane is Stormblood's main hub, and it is a neutral city that acts as the only port in Hingashi open to foreign vessels. Kugane is reminiscent of Japan's closed-door policy during the country's Edo period. Of the new zones, two stood out for me, the Ruby Sea and Azum Steppe. The Ruby Sea was an interesting zone as it highlighted the expansion's swimming and diving features, with a good portion of the zone taking place underwater. The underwater experience offered some great lore and questing experiences. The Azum Steppe was by far my favourite of the new zones. The zone's story made the zone feel alive as you experienced the different cultures of the various Zayla tribes and took part in a battle that determined which faction ruled above all others. Now let's look at the new jobs, Red Mage and Samurai. From the start of the expansion until I finished the story, I played the Red Mage. The new job impressed me with its versatile nature of going from magic attacks to jumping in close to an enemy and launching a barrage of melee attacks before jumping away and continuing with ranged magic attacks. The Red Mage's ability to perform actions quickly also made it stand out, with the job being able to perform instant casts of various abilities when the dual cast trait activates. The Red Mage also offers healing support in the form of healing and resurrection abilities. While they aren't as effective as the healer's abilities, they are useful, especially when a healer needs a bit of help. In regards to the Samurai, I didn't play a lot of it, but my opinion hasn't changed since my Stormblood preview. It feels a bit stagnant, and I can best describe the job as an easier to play version of the Monk. With that said, Samurai is proving just as popular as the Red Mage. In terms of combat, Stormblood offers some much needed battle system changes. The changes see abilities being moved, culled or merged with existing abilities. For example, the Paladin's Rampart is no longer a Paladin exclusive ability, but is now a tank role ability. In terms of merging abilities, this involves upgraded versions of existing abilities becoming one. For example, the Red Mage's Jolt 1 and Jolt 2 exist as just Jolt, with the power of the ability increasing when you unlock the next highest version of Jolt, i.e. Jolt 2. The battle system's biggest change is the job gauge. The gauge is unique to each job, with the gauges offering key job specific information. For example, the Red Mage's job gauge shows how much white and black mana you've collected in an effort to show you when you can best use your melee attacks. The job gauges are an impressive quality of life addition to the game, as the job specific information is now in your face and not hidden at the top of your screen under status effects. In terms of instant content, Stormblood offers 8 new 4-player dungeons and 3 new 8-player trials. The new dungeons, 5 of which are leveling and 3 for max level, all offer a vibrant array of locations, from the ship graveyard of the Siren Song Sea to the Edo period buildings of Kugane Castle. In terms of dungeon difficulty, they were challenging, but like any instance, once you learn the mechanics, they become a breeze. Since I'm discussing dungeons, I have to give a shout out to the second boss in Bardam's Metal. It is an unexpected treat and took me by surprise. Regarding the 3 new trials, they are primarily primal focused, and as such offer a far greater challenge when compared to the expansion's dungeons. Trials are essentially a one boss dungeon without any trash. The fights in each trial require a large amount of teamwork and concentration, as bosses throw wave after wave of powerful spells. When taking part in a trial, prepare to wipe a lot, even in their normal incarnations. In terms of the trial I enjoyed the most, it would be the Royal Menagerie. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there is a stage transition that requires you to be alert and constantly clicking on a highlighted portion of the screen. Failing to do so can lead to your death. So if PvP content isn't your thing, how is PvP in Stormblood? Well, the battle system changes I mentioned earlier do change PvP. The primary change is that when you visit a PvP area, you enter PvP mode. This new mode changes your traits and hotbars to their PvP variants. The PvP hotbar reduces the number of abilities to just 12, with 7 job-based actions, a choice of 2 additional situational actions such as HP recovery and sprint, and a choice of 3 traits which include increased HP, increased damage, and increased MP regeneration. The PvP changes mean that PvP is a more accessible experience in Stormblood, as it creates a level playing field for both newcomers and veterans alike. So outside of PvP, instances and story, what can you do? Well, there are the usual suspects of exploring, gathering, crafting, but the one side activity that caught my eye this expansion was the sightseeing log, in particular the ones in Kugane. For those who don't know, the sightseeing log involves going to a specific location, usually only accessible via flying, and using /lookout. Now, in Kugane, the logs are in tough to reach locations, and while in all other zones you can just fly to the location, flying is not permitted in Kugane, and as such, to reach the locations you need to go through a rather long, and I must say an enjoyable set of jumping puzzles. Also, seeing 20 plus players attempting to scale an inn is both as awesome and as hilarious as it sounds. Now, the most important part of any MMORPG is the user interface. Mess it up and it can ruin a game. So in Stormblood, how is the UI? Well, honestly, there's next to no UI changes. The changes to the UI are mostly quality of life changes. For example, the class/job tab on the character sheet is now divided into categories and easier to read. Of course, the major change is the job gauge, but I already said enough about that earlier in this review. Now let's talk issues, the most prominent of which is the game's servers. During peak times, the queues to enter the game can range from 30 minutes to 2 hours, and during these peak hours, the game's instance servers can potentially crash, leaving dungeons, trials, and single-player trials inaccessible. The 2 previously mentioned issues meant that leveling and proceeding through the story became a bit of a lottery. Thankfully, just over a week after early access launched, there has been some improvements, but the instance servers are still prone to breaking at peak times. In terms of graphics, Stormblood offers a good mixture of designs and colours, especially in Othad zones, whose rich colours and Far Eastern designs make them stand out from the world around them. In terms of audio, the music is still as strong as ever, and the voice acting continues to go from strength to strength, although I do wish more scenes were voiced. So, in conclusion, Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood is an enjoyable expansion. While the story does falter at times, the overall experience is solid and a worthy investment. With that said, I give Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood a score of 8.5 out of 10, with the game's pros being the new jobs are enjoyable, the battle system changes make combat feel fresh again, the new zones all have their own unique beauty, and the PvP changes. The game's one and only con is several technical issues. Thank you for watching. Please like, favorite and subscribe. For more gaming information, please visit sggaminginfo.com, and do not forget to like our Facebook page at facebook.com/sggaminginfo. And of course, follow us on Twitter at sggaminginfo.